I want to come back to something you said, which was talk to the customer, iterate, talk to the customer, iterate. And just to maybe state the obvious, which is very often entrepreneurs try to iterate without talking to the customer. And one of the things I appreciate about many of the founders who've gone through Y Combinator, this includes the Airbnb founders and others, is in the early days doing things that don't scale, right? Really taking a manual approach to interacting with customers. What else would you consider core principles or learnings that you took away from Y Combinator or Polygram specifically, or anyone else involved?
Well, I don't know if this came up in your research, but actually I worked at Airbnb before starting Coinbase. So
yes, indeed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was employee 40 there or something like that. And then I got to learn a lot from them too about, the perseverance and how they ran product and all that. It was really cool. But I guess some of the lessons just generally from that ecosystem, because it all came from Y Combinator and Airbnb and all that stuff. I mean, another one of my favorite kind of polygrammisms is action produces information, right? Mm-hmm. So there's many times where you're sitting around and you're like, all right, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And you're kind of staring into the abyss, like into the cloud, the fog ahead of you, and you don't really know what to do. And so people sometimes get stuck in those environments and they never take any action, basically. But if you just take some steps into the unknown, you might not be doing the right thing, but oftentimes by doing that action, you'll realize what you should have been doing instead. There was a great story that kind of went along with this where the early days at Coinbase, actually before it was even called Coinbase, I was just tinkering on some stuff nights and weekends while I was at Airbnb. And I remember I built this very simple app with a friend of mine. I think it was just called Bitcoin Wallet or something. It may still be on GitHub somewhere, but it was basically an Android app. And we decided, hey, we want to make like a Bitcoin wallet that runs on Android. It was supposed to be very simple, right? And we didn't have any kind of cloud thing behind it. It wasn't any sort of a company or anything like that. And so we basically ran a full Bitcoin node right on the Android phone, which at the time, people might laugh at it now, but at the time, Bitcoin nodes were very small and lightweight and they could run on phones. And so we coded this thing up and we launched it. I was just trying stuff. I didn't know what I was doing. We weren't even trying to make a company. We were just kind of like trying to learn this stuff in the evenings in our free time. And I launched it. I remember the minute that we launched it, there was like Wired wrote some little article about it. I was like, wow, that's so cool. Wired wrote an article about it. But the minute we launched it, I realized we had built it wrong. And the reason I realized that was that we were we were running the whole Bitcoin node right on the phone, and it would take forever. Like every time you opened the app, it would say syncing, and it would have to sync like for 3-4 minutes or whatever to catch up with the latest blockchain blocks. And so that was a good example where like I knew instantly we'd built the wrong thing. And then what went off in my head was, okay, someone's going to have to make a company around this that has a truly like a lot of this stuff running in the cloud where you can do all the backups and security and sync with the blockchains. And I remember thinking at that time, oh, that's not going to be me because I have a day job and like that's a really serious company to run, and someone will probably try to hack into it, and it's like you got to have like a lot of money for that. So I didn't immediately get to the next step was maybe I'll start that company, but that was a good example of just taking action produced information, which made the next step a little bit more clear.